T. Williams. Sorry about that. There you go.
Hello.
Right, let's get. There's so much here. Let me just get my notes. So, Ryan, like we did with Phil, let's take it back a bit. So, you were in social media, saw your business 3 years ago, but let's wind it all the way back. North Chad School into job. What was your first job? Because was social media even around then? In the nicest possible way, you're your own stuff.
I think it was MySpace and MSN, as good as it got then. No, so I left school, I went to sixth form for 2 years within the same North Chad, realised all I did was get drunk pretty much every single weekend. Couldn't be bothered doing anything.
Sorry, lesson number one to sell for multi-seven figures. Get drunk for a couple of years.
Yeah, in a weird way, it made me realise that one of the reasons I didn't want to go to uni, because I just thought I'm just going to do this another 3 or 4 years. And what I learned from school was I was like a lot of people, I couldn't write. I hated those exam questions that were for 15 marks. Why should Tony open an Apple shop? It's like, I don't know. But so I just hate it, and I thought I can't do dissertations and essays. It's not the way I worked, and I just like messing about with things. So I come across an IT apprenticeship that was hands-on, and it actually allowed me to open up. This was before the days of the cloud. God, I sound old, don't I? But if you wanted a PC, you actually had to upgrade memory in it and things like that. So I always say I learned to be a mechanic without getting my hands oily. I could just fiddle with things and play with wires and reset buttons. And that was an apprenticeship over in Leeds, which I drove every single day. My old clapped out, my first car, a diesel Peugeot 106. 68 miles a day, but it was counting.
Fond memories, aren't they, with those first cars, taking you over to Leeds, M62. Yeah. Bet you know every bump in the road going over there. Yeah. But after the apprenticeship then, didn't you end up working in posh Cheadle?
Well, yeah, I went from there, and from that apprenticeship it opened up doors. It got me a job over in Cheadle, just off near the John Lewis. That ended up being like the dream job I was 18 when I got that, and it took me to South Africa for the World Cup. So it was I look back now and it was just like a dream come true. But when I break it down, I kind of got it from that apprenticeship. That's why I'm so a big advocate for kind of like the hands-on work for people and things like that. And obviously university is fantastic, but for some people, just getting your hands dirty and doing things works better.
And the apprenticeship. So now, a little story, I think, was it the Cheadle job where the receptionist had an impact on you getting the job? Because this is a lovely little story.
Yeah, so I found out months after getting the job, because I come from like this apprenticeship, I aced the technical test within the exam, within the interview, gave all the right answers. But I come out, my future manager who interviewed me said, he's 18, he's a bit wet behind the ears, I don't think he's going to get on, how's he going to... Because the bosses were Mexican and they were quite fiery. He's like, how are we going to send him into the boss's office when his emails aren't working? He's going to melt and things. But so they were a bit worried about my temperament, my character. But the receptionist said, oh no, out here, he didn't shut up. He didn't shut up. He was a lovely lad, honestly, player. And so she had a big impact on him and giving me a chance. And yeah, never looked back.
And I really like that, because I think all too often, I say to people when I'm talking about, when do first impressions start? It's not when you walk in the room. Your first impressions practically got you the job, and they were chatting to the receptionist.
Yeah, pretty much. That's probably parking straight as well.
And 18 years old, going to the World Cup in South Africa.
Yeah.
Why? What was it like?
Yeah, so I'd started at 18. It was about 1920 and 2010 when it came around. It was just phenomenal. Couldn't believe when they asked me to go. So I was looking after the IT and the ticketing equipment within one of the venues called Billingtons. And because England did rubbish at that tournament, we finished second. We actually played Germany, and they shouldn't have played in that venue, but by being England, they did. So I got to watch England versus Germany, people into football. That's when Lampard's ball went about 19 yards over the line. I was sat behind Sven, David Beckham, so it was it was just surreal. And then they ended up going to the final there as well, watching the Netherlands versus Spain. So I was stood about here to the World Cup when they were doing the presentation, because we had our lanyards on that had all the security on, so we were just bopping through everywhere. It was surreal when I look back, yeah.
So From there to Sandbrook Park. Hang on, right.
Yeah.
This is brilliant. We sat in Corby Coffee going through, because I've known a lot about Ryan's later years, but it was like, hang on a minute. So didn't you get offered Brazil and then took Sandbrook Park?
Yeah, I fell in love.
on.
I fell in love. Yeah, so at the time I met my then future wife, and obviously going over to Stockport, Cheadle every day, we started to take its grind, and they wanted me to, Brazil was the next World Cup, they offered me to move out there, but I'd just, like I said, fallen in love with my future wife, so we had plans, I didn't want to be away. So we're still together now, so it worked. So I kind of turned that opportunity down, and because I took a job, like I say, on Sandbrook Park from where we are, which seemed like 2 minutes, I can go home for my lunch, let dogs out and everything, and it just very quickly turned into the job from hell.
So I think, which is interesting, because I think everybody I've interviewed up here, it's not a journey like that where you go up, is it? It's a journey where you think you're going the right place and it bumps and down. Yeah. So it didn't work out at Sandbrook Park, did it?
No, I walked out it got to the 3-month probation period, and they went, we're extending it for 3 months, and I walked out pretty much on the spot. I just said, I'm not kind of... It wasn't even necessarily an arrogant way, because I'm not like, if anyone knows me, it was, the job I'd taken was a backward step. I was being asked to fix things that took 5 or 6 hours, and then the boss had the cheek to sit me down and say, you're not closing enough tickets. And they were comparing me to people who were like resetting passwords, and it'd take them 30 seconds. So they were resetting 100 passwords a day. I'm spending all day trying to fix a server, and I'm not closing enough tickets. So I rang another managed service company that I knew from my last business that was over in Whitworth. I spoke to them, and they kindly offered me a job, so I wasn't out of work. And then that again was brilliant. I met some brilliant people over there. That was great. Then the boss sits us down after 6 months that they're moving to Haydock at the other end of the East Lancs, which was even further away than Cheadle.
Can you imagine that? It was nearly in Brazil, Sandbrook Park, and potentially Liverpool.
Yeah. So
then took you to MMU.
Yeah. So it was one of those jobs where I'd just done an exam within my current company for a piece of technology, and I speculatively applied for this job at Manchester Metropolitan University without a degree. And it was just one of them, sometimes I think we've all done it, you go for a job, you think, I'm not going to get it, and I got the interview, and so suddenly 3-4 weeks later I was sat there like going, and they asked me, right, can you deploy this server farm? And I was like, but I did. I pulled it off, and I was there about a good 3 or 4 years. So
I think, is that you there, Ryan?
That was the very first job, yeah. Box of cornflakes under the table there. I don't know why.
I have noticed that, yeah. Moving forward. So you're there, and on your journey to where you are now, in your words, the job at MMU was a good job. Not, you even said, I think, a great job. You were living at home, good salary, great holidays, practically at university yourself.
Yeah, I'd moved in with Jenna by that point, my wife. But I always call it like, it was like being a student but being paid, because it was good hours. We'd go out for lunch pretty much every day, into the pub, couple of pints. It was just a great job. It was anything.
That's when you could do that, by the way.
Well, yeah, but it was like
the kids listening, you can't do that anymore.
It was like anything in the public sector. Like, we had the yearly pay rises, we had tiers, we had good career progression. It was fantastic, and so I decided to pack it all in to do a few tweets. So
yeah, so not quite. So you were working though, full-time job. Lexi comes along. You have a little girl. Yeah. You're at home. You're relatively newly married, and then how do you get into Twitter? How does that happen?
So Lexi, it turns out, she had an undiagnosed milk allergy, and this was 2013. So it was relatively unknown back then. It was vegan, wasn't even very popular. So she was an unsettled baby that was just crying all the time. My wife really struggled. So we were doing the usual in shifts at night time. And I found Twitter and this social media as just a bit of an escape, really. I used to I'd be browsing and see all these people were making these big Twitter accounts. And then I was like, I'd love to have something like that. And I made a different few, and they were rubbish. And that's not worked. And I was watching Sky Sports one night, because it was in the days before Netflix, when you actually had to channel surf if you wanted to watch something, or, God forbid, put a DVD in. So,
DVD? If you don't know what it is, I'll show you. We'll come back to that after.
So it was at Sky Sports I was watching, and it put on the old, the Memories programme, which would show like football from the 90s and all the old headlines. And I just had one of these weird late night sparks of, you imagine if social media existed in the 90s? What would the headlines look like? So I made an account called Slow Sports News. So it was a play off Sky Sports News, but posting old headlines, and it just took off. It was just one of them. I just hit this wave. People loved it. It was a mixture of nostalgia. I used it like people tricked each other by sending each other old headlines, and that was my first like in the, like what you say, the industry.
I know, before we move on to another great account, were you making any money at that time, or was it just like you were just growing it, having fun at night when Lexi was away?
Yeah, so initially it was a bit of fun, but then as you start to get a few followers, it was, I always call it like the early days of what you'd say is influencer marketing these days. But it was like companies like Ladbrokes, Betfair, they'd pay your account to tweet their latest betting links. And it was again in the days before like GambleAware, so it was
Unregulated?
Yeah, unregulated, yeah, that's the one. So these gambling companies could use as many accounts as they wanted to get sign-ups, and like anything with the gambling world, the more people sign up, the more people lose, the more they make. But you're getting an affiliate cut of that. So that started to be as a little business. I was getting a couple of £100, and then so I set myself up like just a little limited company, just to kind of, and that was a nice, like, I call it like my little side hustle. It was just paid for a couple of nice holidays, a couple of weekends away. Paid for, yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't a full thing at this time, but then another account came along just after that, Deluded Brendan. Tell us about this, because this is a good story.
Yeah, so that was what I was like with my massive eureka moment. The Liverpool manager at the time was called Brendan Rodgers. He's the Celtic manager now. And he was being ridiculed in the press for just, he was living in cloud cuckoo land, really. Like, he'd say these really philosophical things and silly things, and he was compared to, if people watch David Brent on The Office, Ricky Gervais's character, he was compared to that, just being like, thinking everyone was his best mate, and he wasn't. So I made an account called Deluded Brendan, and I started to tweet things in like a really philosophical manner. But I used to somehow got into his psyche, somehow that a couple of times I tweeted something when the Liverpool game had finished, and he come out in his press conference and he said something very similar. And I was having tweets going, who is this person? Is this actually him? But that at his peak got 350,000 followers. And that was like, it put me on the map within, like, say, that industry, and that's what led to some quite interesting job offers, really.
So on that, didn't you? I've got a photo here. So let's. I think it's the next one.
Yeah.
So go on, tell us about this, Ryan.
So yeah, that account, there was something called the Football Blogging Awards. It's called the Football Content Awards now, and they were set up to give out awards within like podcasting, YouTubers, those early days, but they brought in the best in social category. So it was for good Twitter accounts, and they kept messaging me saying, will you come to the awards, will you come? And I was running these like anonymously, like they were just, even most of my mates didn't know about it. It was just this online persona that I'd run, and so I didn't really want to go. So they badgered me to come, and it got to like one of them where it was, I kind of knew I'd won, because they were so desperate for me to go. I thought, if I don't win here, it's going to be a little bit awkward. So I went, and I had this idea of, I'll take a mask. I go and collect the award with a mask on. No one will know it's me. Like I was Banksy or something. So I literally turned up, sat down, like in the tables like this, and I was next to Stan Collymore, who's he's a football pundit, ex-Liverpool, Notts Forest. People might know him for the Eureka Johnson story. His nickname is Motormouth, so he's the loudest guy in the room. And because I wouldn't give my real name, my name card said Deluded Brendan. So I sits down, Stan Collymore sat next to me, I'm like this dead quiet, and he just went, everyone, it's Deluded Brendan, it's Deluded Brendan. Like, sorry for the Brummie accent, but it's...
I thought it was Liverpool. No.
Something. No. And so then he got a picture tweeted, a picture of me and him saying, I'm sat with that Deluded Brendan. He's got like 700,000 followers, and that was it then. The game was up. Like, I had people, mates messaging me, friends messaging me, and then so that's it. I did win the award.
You won the award.
Took the mask up, but I didn't put it on.
But I think that from then on, sort of fast forward a little bit, there were yourself and, being humble, a couple of other people that kind of control this area of the market in Twitter, and between you had a couple of million followers. And is that how you started? Is that how you got together and started a business?
Yeah, because like I mentioned before, but within that time, because I had these big accounts, there was companies that exist. People might have heard of people like Lad Bible, Social Chain, which is Stephen Bartlett's ex-company. And I've still got messages in my inbox from 2014 from Stephen Bartlett and Dominic McGregor asking to hire me, which would have been a much different journey than I'm on now. But again, at the time, because I mentioned this steady IT job I had, they couldn't match like what my salary was or anything. And to be fair to them, I thought they were mad. I thought, you can't make social media businesses. That's not a career. I'm happy in setting my IT ways and doing this as a hobby. But then, like I say, one thing led to another and the world got bigger and bigger. And as you say, I met 2 other people within the industry who weren't necessarily affiliated to a company. They were just themselves. And we clubbed together and we had 2 million Twitter followers. And it was when the industry was like, we've got to start doing something with this. But it quickly became apparent that it wasn't like, we couldn't just do it in the sport world. So we made a page called It's Gone Viral, which I've told this lots of people before, that the biggest comparison, it was the You've Been Framed of Facebook. It was any funny video of someone's anti-dog cat falling over at a wedding, whatever, was on there, and it was collating viral clips and news, and that, again, just exploded on Facebook. And then, so this was still the side hustle at that point, but it allowed us to really monetize it, and that's when the serious chat started happening of where do we go from here.
So then that's a big decision, isn't it? Your daughter's growing up, you've got a mortgage, you've got a set, making that leap at that stage. Now, when I started my business, nothing to lose. I wasn't married, no family. It was relatively easy, but you had all that to potentially lose. So what happened there? You got together and went back to Sandbrook?
Well, yeah. So it kind of obviously happened over a course of a few months, but every single morning on the tram into Manchester, tram home, I'm tweeting, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Football's on in an evening and at a weekend, so it was just consuming me. And I was trying to be a dad, a husband, social media guy, IT guy, and I got to a point where something had to give. And my wife and my dad saw just how passionate I was about social media, and it was like, well, what would we need to do it full time? And the biggest thing was, well, I had to match my salary to begin with, mortgage bills and things like that. So I sat with the other 2 business partners because they were already independently doing it. They were already, their money wasn't as important to them too, but we had like a bit of a gentleman's agreement of, right, if you come in this full time, you can make sure you pay yourself kind of thing. And we wrote it down on what I'd say was a contract, and I found it years later and I thought, God, that won't stand up anywhere. Like, if that first year had gone wrong, that piece of paper was like, it may as well have been on the back of a fag packet, but it was confident at the time. And my dad gave me a few assurances going, look, I know if it went majorly wrong, I could bridge you out. Because the thing was, I was going to give it a year, worst case, go back into IT. Contracting's massive in IT, I was just going to go back into. But like I say, the rest is history, as we were saying before.
The rest is history. And come back to Sandbrook Park. Now, I asked Ryan a question, because when Twitter first came out, I started tweeting for my business at the time, and my wife, who was in the room over there, was like, what are you doing all the time? You're on Twitter. And then it all stopped when I won a holiday through Twitter to Dubai for 5 nights in a 5-star hotel. And then she said, all right, keep tweeting then, Ian. And then, so I said to Ryan, you're doing all this at the start, and you said there was just like a seminal moment where you were driving the car one day, you needed to get a tweet out there, so Jenny was doing it, and go on, tell us about that.
Yeah, so we'd had a day out over in Chester with Lexi, our eldest, our only one at the time, and Liverpool had played, I think they'd lost, so I knew straight away it was going to be a funny tweet. But we were just setting off, we were in the car, and I'd heard it on the radio, and I'm not, she's like, what's up with you? I really need to get this tweet out. Kind of pull over. She said, we're not pulling over for you to do a tweet. Read it out, I'll type it. I was like, right. So I dictated it to her, and she sends it. All right, it's sent, right, carry on driving. Like, within like a minute, she goes, Ryan, it's like 500 retweets. And Ryan, your phone won't stop buzzing. And that was the very first point she went, wow. She didn't really just realise how popular this account was, and that was a real like tipping moment. She was like, oh, I get it now. So then from that is when It's Gone Viral came around, which was more generic entertainment and things like that. Jenna would always like help out with meme ideas and picture ideas. That's and
brilliant.
Stuff like
She got in, helping out.
Yeah.
So as you go full time, you take on offices. That was the round circle to Sandbrook, because your first office that you had, you could see the place that you walked out of years before. Is that right?
Yeah. It wasn't intentional, but Arrow Mill, just off the back of Sandbrook Park, just a shared office spaces. We got that when our second daughter came along, because suddenly the house just seemed to get half the size. I just couldn't work, and I was doing bits and bobs, so it was like, go and get this.
There you go, look at that.
That was my garage, that was my dog, bless him.
And
so
you've...
Whose phone's that? Is it?
Don't worry about it.
Just one of my biggest fans there ringing.
Don't worry, that's making him millions secretly. That's the new thing. Yeah.
So we ended up got a small office space because the three owners of the company, my two other co-founders, Matt was from Wolverhampton, Andrew was from Leeds. But again, they were single, no kids. They just worked from home happily, but I needed a bit of space to kind of just get out of the house, and it was dead cheap, just two-person office, no windows, yellow walls, but it was just my little space, my first office, our first office, but it ended up being mine. But yeah, it was overlooking. I could see the company that I'd walked out of. So it's just a nice little bit of a bit of sweet.
Full circle moment, a bit of sweet. Yeah. Now moving forward, we talked about growth before. It's never quite like that. There's ups and downs. So one thing that stood out when we were chatting was the pandemic and Facebook switching off and then switching on again.
Yeah.
So tell us about that, because that was like, oh my God, but yeah, money making.
Yeah, so the majority of the company's earnings were from Facebook at the time. So that was when an advert served, we got paid. So we had pages with millions and millions of followers. So it was earning, this was at its peak, so it was earning a lot. But then when the pandemic hit, like anything, the first thing that gets hit in any disaster is marketing, is advertising. So companies stopped advertising on Facebook, therefore Facebook couldn't pay pages like ours to serve the adverts. But Facebook being Facebook hid it behind a few different reasons. It was, you've got to make your videos look this way, that way. So it was about a month into the pandemic, we woke up to the message of you've lost access to monetization on Facebook, which was about 70% of the company's earnings at the time. So there was a few emergency board meetings on Zoom. I remember being sat at Jenna's dressing table, my wife, because we'd had the house renovated just as the pandemic started. We had half the house taken away because we were having it extended, so I had nowhere to work. I was working in places like Lexi's bedroom on video calls with the princess sign above my head. It looked good. So we went, badgered Facebook, we got on, why have you done it? They give us all these reasons, if you fix this, this and this. So we actually had to speculate to accumulate, we had to hire a few different people to make videos look a certain way. And luckily, I always use that word luckily, wasn't we? worked hard, but gratefully, I should say, it came back after about 8 weeks. But people are remembering the pandemic, sorry to bring it up, but social media consumption went through the roof. The wife were making videos, there was paramedics on TikTok, there was everything. So social media consumption went through the roof. So when our pages grew as in follower count, even though we weren't making money, but when the adverts came back on, we would start to earn more than ever. So we were one of them digital companies in COVID that excelled by the end of it, but it was a few stressful days, let's just say. And
I think that, another for us all who running businesses, it's not just, the end result was awesome, but when they turned it off, 70% of your income. Now, okay, if you suffered in the pandemic, there were people who lost completely, but 70% losing it. Now, one of the things that you shared with me, I hope you don't mind me sharing, is that you had done, and this is something that some of us can take if you don't do it already, is you always had 3 months overheads in a separate account, and that gave you thinking time and breathing time.
Yeah, it was as we was growing, we started to turn over nicely. We reinvested everything in staff growth, better computers, to better videos, but we always funneled money into the rainy day fund, and we needed that rainy day fund.
It poured down, and you needed it. Yeah.
So we had about 40 members of staff on the books at that point when the pandemic hit, and I think we only furloughed 2 that were in a section that was just kind of unworkable. I think it was the section where we used to interview film stars and soap stars and things like that. There was no films being made. So we only furloughed 2 members of staff out of the whole company, and because we had the money to carry on, the pages grew, and because we didn't kind of lose focus when it came back, it ended up being better than ever.
So you kept growing, out of the pandemic, out of the flames, Phoenix rises, keeps going forward, and then you moved to Manchester, to Ancoats, because you had a little bit of a challenge getting people to Rochdale. Would that be fair?
Yeah, we were hiring people. So we'd moved before the pandemic, but back end of 2019, we were hiring people like from your Lad Bibles or who lived in Northern Quarter, and a couple of them actually came for an interview. And no disrespect to, in fact, yeah, disrespect to Rochdale. It's,
he's an Oldham lad, plastics fan.
They turned up for the interview, and a couple of them turned round like, I can't come working here every day. And this was the days before the remote working, so we didn't even think, oh well, we could pay someone to sit in the flat in Manchester and make us. So we had to, for the growth of the company, move into Manchester. So we got a space in Ancoats just before like the renovations were happening on Cutting Square. So it was the old Sankey's nightclub, Beehive Mill. We got a really good deal on there. And it was great for the company, but this is my part of the journey when, without realising it, it was the beginning of the end for me. Because the company was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We'd got Manchester HQ. I wasn't there as much because it's not as easy to nip. Because I still wanted to, because one thing I wanted to do as a business owner is still maintain my freedom of picking my daughter up when I wanted, going out, having date, otherwise why are you running the business kind of thing. So that's when then the pandemic came, and then the 2021 we started to hire people remotely, loads and loads, and then the first, I don't know if the picture is, there was all that one. So that was the first meeting back after the pandemic, and you can see how big we'd got. And obviously we're having a laugh in the middle, but I was walking around my own company and I didn't know Adam from Eve. Like, I didn't know, and I'd lost everything that I enjoyed about it. My days were no longer making funny tweets, funny videos. It was strategy meetings, board meetings, appraisals, disciplinaries. My dad's cats died, like,
No cats dancing with sombreros on.
No, so I'd started to lose a lot of love for what it was for, and coming off the back of the pandemic, and that's when we had the company valued, and we mentioned the word EBITDA before, we got a times 8 to times 10 valuation of the company, which that goes off your turnover, and it was jaw-dropping, and it was, wow. If we can get that for that, I'll happily bid her off.
I'll take it. So you did in the end take it, but it wasn't quite that smooth. Did you get an offer, it fell through, and then another offer, Halloween? Go on, talk us through that.
Yeah, so we had a private investor initially wanted to buy us. He owns a company where you can sell your car, and they've got a really annoying jingle on the website. I'm not allowed to say who it is. So he owns that. Then when the Russia-Ukraine war happened, he pulled out, so I think his investments must have got a hit. But this was January 2022 when we decided to sell, and this was April. So I'd gone on almost my own sabbatical, and this is what I'll always say to if anyone's ever selling the business or going through an exit, it's not over till the fat lady sings. But I got stuck in this no man's land I'd completely taken a step back, like I was already there on the beach. But it fell through, and I was stuck like, well, I'm too far removed from the business to get back involved, and we still need to kind of sell. But so we took it to like a broker service, which was our valuation that we'd got, and it went to 10 different sort of angel investors, people like that, and it was all vetted down. We went with the British Growth Fund in the end, and it was the government-led one that, ironically, is underpinned by all the banks. So it was just a circle of money, really.
So again, it's flying. You've got an offer. You're thinking, I'm there on the beach. I know you love your holidays. You're a holiday man. And it fell through. You get the other offer coming through. It's going right to the wire, though. And was there a deadline and last day?
Yeah, it was. I've come to learn it's quite normal now, but they do something called an option agreement, which expires on a certain day, and they ran the option agreement down to the very last day. Just to stress, and then I was on because it's a large sum of money, I was on the phone to the fraud department for about 2 hours that day as the money was trying to go through, and my phone cut out. And I'm not proud of it, but I tell people, because it's the reality, is I put my fist through the plasterboard in my wall. Like, I just had snapped that day. Like, even though it's supposed to be the happiest day of your life, it was stressful. And my wife Jenna got on and went, "What's happened?" And I tried to cover it up. I went, "I've walked into the wall." She said, it's a fist shape. And I was like, I punched the wall. There's nothing, but it all went through, and it was actually October 1st, so it was Halloween. And it all went through, and the app pings, and it's like all that. And then the kids walked in, and they told them, they went, "Can we go trick-or-treating now?" Just like, yeah. So,
multi-seven-figure sum, trick-or-treating, out there.
Yeah, I think I was whiter than the kids dressed as zombies.
What was it like day after? So you do that. This big sum of money, the fraud department let it through. It's sat there in your account. You wake up the next morning. I've not experienced. What's the next morning like?
Oh, I open my laptop, LinkedIn. Here we go. Where's BBC? Dragon's Den. Let's go. Nothing. Nothing. Oh, and I soon come to realise that everything I'd ever done was all behind like Deluded Brendan, it's gone viral, Slow Sports News. Nobody knew who I was. And that was like a kind of a weird, what do I do now kind of thing. And that we met not a few months after.
That,
yeah. So you've been through my post-exit journey quite a lot really, haven't you?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, we met, and I think, it's safe to say, time we could keep going all day, but we've got a couple of other people. Just fast forward a bit. Since then, you've done a few things. Lots of ideas like entrepreneurs. You've done a few things, but you've kind of you've gone back to your passion now. Tell us about you working with soap stars, and just share a couple of the stats there.
Yeah, so I found a kind of, just looking at the industry over the months, a lot of these soap stars, actors, not necessarily your Hollywood A-listers, but within your Emmerdales, your things like that, they're all heavily on Instagram and TikTok, but none of them really use Facebook. And Facebook's now in a space where it's making good money again. So I'm working with a couple of them of using their Instagram followers to push them over to Facebook. And I'm just taking like a commission to run it, and it's kind of back to where I started, making money on Facebook.
And knowing Ryan as well, he's done a lot of stuff for charity. You danced at Strictly, Jill's in the room. He was amazing. Give him a round of applause. What he performed, he was amazing. He was amazing. You've written a book with your wife, but now when I've seen you recently, you kind of got this next level happiness. You found it. He's doing what he does well, and he's made. Just share with us what some of the stats on this latest account.
Yeah, so it's with them. Yeah, it's about 28,000 followers. It's there's no secret. It's Aaron Dingle off Emmerdale, Danny Miller. It's a family. It's called the Miller family because he's dead popular. He's in a big storyline at the moment. So I've grown it on Facebook to 28,000, but got like 6 million views last month. And we haven't really, because it's just got monetization, because Facebook, you have to do it for a few weeks. So we haven't really properly, I've just been replicating his Instagram stuff. So 6 million views, like 400,000 engaged posts and things like that. And I found that the soap world, fans-wise, is a crazy place. Like, people are involved in them programs, aren't they? The messages I get, are you dying, Danny? Are you dying, Aaron? Like, I don't know. So, but the hyper super engaged, and that's what it is now. It's with anyone doing, so if you can get a hyper engaged community, that's almost better than millions of unengaged people. So.
And just on those stats from a standing start, nothing on Facebook like a month or two ago. Just to wrap it up then, you've been through such a fantastic journey from IT apprentice, you purchase your little car, to multi-7-figure sellout, and you're going again, and you're Oldham, and you support Latics, you're Oldham Labrador, you're an awesome dad. Give us a couple of tips to anybody on their own entrepreneurial journey that you've learned.
Get a good wife or partner. That's what I say. No,
it's true.
I'll clip that bit for her. No, because like I said, we could go on forever, but Jenna gave up her career for 2 years in the middle of all that while we grew the company to look after the children. And obviously Jenna's cleverer than me. She's still working now because she can't not do anything. She works in education. So that, and I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I think, like you mentioned there, there's certain things that do have to give, because you have to kind of give it your all when you're growing a business. But I think the key is, if you've got to think, why are you running the business? I always come back to. There was times when I lost my way and I was here, there and everywhere, and you bring it back to what you're doing it for. And I initially quit the job in Manchester was to spend more time with the kids, with the family. And so you've got to just think, what is the purpose of your business? Why are you doing it? Why are you your own boss? Do you need that extra thing, or is it better, you only live once kind of thing? But it all comes down to, like, say, the personal circumstance. Are you doing it to make money? Are you doing it to enrich your life? Are you doing it for 10 holidays a year? Are you, so yeah, that's the.
So remembering why you're doing it, like Simon Sinek says, go back to your why.
Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen, everybody in the room, please put your hands together. Absolutely fantastic.
Thanks, Ryan.
Now, so first one back, we've got lots